And welcome back to Loopcast. Today, you just get me and Erika. It's going to be a fun show. We were just laughing about a few different things before the chat popped in. But welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone in the chat. Thank you guys for joining us today. Got a great Wednesday show lined up for you. And as you can see, we might get a little spicy with a little veil talk at the end. There's a very interesting article in the Free Press about it. And I know that's going to solicit a lot of emotions. And what I like about doing a live show with the chat of just awesome people, we're going to get a lot of interesting perspectives on that, I think. And before we start, I have an admission to make. Okay.
Oh, confession time.
So many of you may know, well, two things. One is Balloon Gate. Balloons show up on my screen when I record this podcast, and I don't know why. And I did not know why until yesterday when I was talking to my lovely coworker, Sarah, and she's like, Tom, you know, that's an Apple feature, right? And I was like, what are you talking about?
What?
Apparently, if you throw up a peace sign, balloons will come on your screen. So of those in the chat right now, if you're in like a Zoom meeting or something like that, and you have a Mac at a certain iOS, balloons will pop up. And then she said, Tom, if you really want to take it to the next level, you throw up two of these and lasers will come on your screen. As Erika's seeing now. But I don't think that this, is this really streaming to everyone? I don't know if that went out to everyone. You guys got to give me confirmation on it. But I don't think it goes through the stream. So you guys probably think that I'm schizophrenic or like I'm seeing things or I'm the kid from The Sixth Sense. Like I'm seeing balloons. I promise I'm not crazy. It does come through on the screen. Okay. You guys saw lasers.
All right. They don't think you're crazy, Pogo.
Great. I thought you guys thought I was insane. Like Tom's just seeing balloons in his personal life. And I'm like, no, I don't see balloons. Number one. And then number two, I think we need to have a conversation with people in the chat as well. Jeremy came on yesterday, and we also got a retweet from Dr. Pekalik, which is pretty sick.
Yes,
because I admire the Pekalik family quite a bit. They were kind of Abe legends before I got there. I was a little disappointed I didn't get to take them as an economics major. But Jeremy came on and did a great job. Shout out Jeremy. And my mom, I was talking to my mom yesterday, and she listens to the show, and she's like, Tom, it does not feel right to have people call you Pogo. Like he was starting sentences, Pogo, that's a great point. And it really bugs my mom. And I think we need to kind of have like an inner circle conversation. Like, do you think external guests can call me Pogo? Or is this more like, inside the house, inside the family, you can call me Pogo? What do you think on that, Erika? Should we lay down the law on that?
That's a good question. And shout out to Janet. I love you, Janet. We go way back, me and Pogo's mom. So I want to honor her concerns and definitely her feelings about this. At the same time, I think Pogo is kind of like a brand. I don't know. You have like the Pogo book behind your head. I mean, it's kind of hard not to call you Pogo.
And I was thinking about that, like people that don't know me in my personal life and they only listen to the show, they would think that my name is probably Pogo at this point.
They think your parents are some like crazy boomers who were going off the rails when they named you like Pogo. What's that?
Yeah, people in the chat, they don't know the story behind Pogo. There really isn't a story behind Pogo. Like my last name's Pogasic, so people all of a sudden started calling me Pogo here for the first time in my life. And then actually shout out Father Liam, fan of the show. He was like, it reminds me of this comic strip that was made in the 50s called I Go Pogo, or the book was called I Go Pogo, but the cartoon was Pogo, and is famous.
He ran for president, didn't the cartoon character?
Cartoon character ran for president in the 50s, started a riot at Harvard. And so he sent me this book that's on the shelf, which is like super generous. He like found an original copy in an auction. So I was like, man, I got to throw this behind me now. So that's the full story. Love to get the chat's perspective on the Pogo debacle. But one thing you can do, of course, help out the show. Leave a like on this episode. If you guys aren't subscribed, subscribe. You can join us always 11 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday Eastern time. We are here. It is more fun live. That is a fact. And then if you want to help us out, Spotify, Apple Podcast reviews. We love our podcast listeners as well. I actually met one in person, which was pretty cool. Love getting to meet. Seriously, like I cannot believe how educated, good looking, great perspective that people that listen to this program and are in the loop have. It's unbelievable. Shocks me every time.
Best audience ever, I have to say.
I have been told that we need to start the program by calling it this. We're calling it Zuckerpunch. Thank you, Rosie, for the suggestion. So Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted this week that his company censored election-related posts in the lead up to the 2020 election. I have the the actual document that was sent in. So 1, the Biden-Harris administration pressured Facebook to censor Americans. 2, Facebook censored Americans. And 3, Facebook throttled the Hunter Biden laptop story. This is from the House Judiciary GOP. Really shocking reversal, I think, from a head to hear an apology like this and a flip. Mm-hmm. It really starts getting me thinking, like, is he trying to get in front of something here? Is it authentic? Have the tides really changed? Erika, what's your perspective on all this?
Yeah, and just for knowing that, I think I heard this before. This isn't new. So the hearing with Mark Zuckerberg was held earlier this year, and they did uncover the fact that the FBI had pressured Meta. But in his testimony, Zuckerberg, said most of the things that are in this letter. The difference is that this appears to be an unsolicited apology. So the House Judiciary Committee did not ask him to write them to lay it all out there from his perspective. And the interesting thing is his expression of regret in this letter, saying that, I wish we had pushed back on the government. I wish we had not. This is what we thought we were doing. We kind of got a feeling like maybe this is censorship, but we did it anyway. And here's how we've changed. So the story with the Hunter Biden laptop, for example, Zuckerberg says what they did was they started deplatforming stories about the laptop while they awaited their fact checkers from the government to come back with answers. And he said, going forward, we will not deplatform anything before hearing from fact checkers, because of course that delay allowed the presidential campaigns to continue without really having to face that story, or they could continue to say it's Russian disinformation without any kind of other side of the story or investigative journalists saying, no, it's not. So this could have been the decision Meta made about this story, could have been what decided the 2020 election. There were a lot of but at the same time, this was huge. And I think for me, seeing Zuckerberg express any regret, yeah, that's great. It's a little too late in a way, other than going forward. The other thing in the letter that I don't think we mentioned yet that was interesting was at the end, he said, the very last paragraph, he talks about how he was trying to use Facebook and Meta to basically just get out the vote, make voting accessible. The Zucker boxes. Say that again.
It was called the Zucker boxes.
The Zucker boxes, right?
It was it was funding from his family. He intended it
to be nonpartisan.
Yeah, it was funding from his family to help it was supposed to be a nonpartisan, get out the vote, help everyone vote, register type initiative. And of course it got hijacked for partisan, or even, I think he was even saying the perception that it even is partisan was strong enough to have him just back out completely. And it's been reflected in Meta's policy. Like I've mentioned on the show, Meta's policy going into the election is basically to throttle everything political. They're trying to make their platform, Instagram at least, as non-political as possible. And people still put stuff out there, and it's crazy. If you go to big accounts, like the numbers on stuff, super low. I mean, it's clear something's going on, but it feels like it's now kind of both sides, or at least they're trying to. So it's hard to really interpret what the motive is here. I just think, so, and one conversation that I wanted to have with you is funny. I was talking to my brother, who's not really into politics very much. And I was talking about the Twitter files, because this was going on long before you have the Facebook part of this element. You know, we get the Twitter files from Schellenberger basically revealing that the White House had such a cozy relationship with social media companies that they were in basically, it felt like texts, but it was emails. Like someone from the White House would be like, hey, this story's out there on the origins of COVID. You need to shut it down. Basically, like they were somehow their lapdogs. And what's funny with Zuck saying he felt pressured, even though technically he didn't have to do anything. Like, you don't think that there's a leverage problem here, that somehow if they were to not comply, that the government couldn't punish them in terms of legislation. I mean, we talk about antitrust stuff all the time when it comes to Google. There's plenty of things the White House could do to punish a company like Meta.
Can I just put out there DOJ? I mean, they don't even have to have a legitimate case against Facebook, but we have seen the Biden administration repeatedly make crazy charges that don't stick. We think of Mark Houck as a prime example. Yeah. So absolutely, obviously the government has the stick to beat non-compliant companies with. They can just launch an investigation. They can just send the IRS after them. The way the executive branch controls all it. Like this is, it is so easy. It's kind of like what's the term with like women and their bosses, that power relationship
dynamic,
where it's yeah, exactly. And that's the relationship of the government, the state, which wields the DOJ, which has been weaponized against the political opponents of the Biden regime. It's undeniable that this isn't like a friendly invitation to suppress a story if you feel like it, Zuck. It's like, you do this or we are sending IRS agents after you. We are sending the DOJ after you. And it doesn't matter if you're innocent. The punishment is the process, right? That's what lawfare is. You can gum up a huge company for decades.
And it always cracks me up when the attack line now from Biden-Harris is, oh my gosh, if Trump gets in office, he's going to use the Department of Justice to persecute his political enemies. Like, really? Like, you think that hasn't been happening right now?
Wait, I'll just channel my inner Josh. It's almost like they're lying.
Shout out Josh on vacation.
Like
his legacy is too large to not mention him every episode. Hopefully he's having a great time. But but what my brother was saying, he's like, well, you know, if there is something that is dangerous or whatever, why is it a problem that the White House could give a heads up to someone and say, hey, take this down? And my body was on fire thinking about how wrong that just felt to me. I was like, but it was a moment of reflection for me too, of like, okay, there's other people that probably think like this, that maybe haven't seen the Twitter files, that maybe haven't gone super deep into this. And I think I was trying to construct like a bigger picture problem with, if the White House controls media narratives to the point that they can get things taken down, even if there is one example where that is good, how about all the other examples? For example, the Hunter Biden laptop story that could have legitimately changed an election in 2020. And they have the power to do that through these relationships. And it's completely anathema to the idea of a free press. I mean, this isn't like a new problem. It is novel in terms of social media. Like, social media wasn't around before. But even if you go back to
for America, right? I think it's a new problem for our country.
True, but even if you go back to early America, like, what set the country on fire? It was Common Sense by Thomas Paine. Like, the idea that people can assemble freely, the idea that people can operate a free press without being retaliated against. Like, in my modern version, that feels like when Elon Musk bought Twitter. And now all of a sudden you get Zuck trying to get in front of things, because I think he might be sensing the tide is turning a little bit, because even though we have a lot of companies still kind of run by people that are super cozy with the White House, even if we have one that's now this way, the idea that information can get out on a large scale, it just makes all of them look horrible, knowing that, like, we all know the truth now. Like, there's actually opportunities to discover something outside of the media narrative. And one thing that I was like, this is something that didn't get to come up and I wanted to show. I'm not sure if you saw the RFK Jr. speech, but RFK Jr. would be a great example of someone that systematic censorship from the White House media regime completely changed his candidacy. And he was candid in this in his speech. And I have a clip that just, like, nothing shows it better than this.
Both relish debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe-to-toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days.
We've been listening to independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from Phoenix outlining what led him to his quixotic quest for the White House.
Did they cut him off?
Now dropping
his speech is still going on.
Relinquishing the title of.
Now
they just cut him off. I haven't seen that.
Now,
oh my gosh.
Where do I begin with how problematic this is? Like,
you'd better begin, because I'm going to jump in on that.
I've seen this a few times and it keeps coming up, and it just, nothing makes me more angry. It's like CNN accused credibly by many people, including RFK Jr., that they are an arm of the regime, which I don't even think I need to convince people listening to this. And for the audio listeners, basically it was them showing CNN streaming the speech and then cutting part of the speech where it's still going on, muting it. And then you get anchors talking over it, saying that he's quixotic or whatever term you want to use. But, like, what would reinforce more to a casual observer that you are a censorship regime than literally cutting part of someone's speech? It's not the first time. I remember they've definitely done this to Trump. Like when Trump talks about certain things, they've done it to RFK many times when he talks about vaccines. This is like almost insulting levels of censorship. You don't think Americans can think for themselves about a speech from a presidential candidate? That's unbelievable to me.
And not only cutting him, but cutting him at the very second he's about to talk about media censorship and putting their finger on the scale. Right. Like it was too perfect.
Yeah.
Do they not even realize just the lack of self-awareness? And like you said, just their disdain for the American voters, that we somehow can't see this happening real time. Whoa.
And you're just proving them right. And I mean, we have more in the show to go over here of what this Harris campaign's new strategy is. It's apparently just stealing all of Trump's ideas. But how I wanted to kind of set up the segment, and Erika, you sent this in. Here at Catholic Vote, we get a lot of different perspectives, which I actually think is one of the cool parts of the job. You see a lot of different ideas. And we received an email from we have mostly Catholics. We have people who aren't Catholic who follow us for sure. And shout out to them. That's really cool. But we got an email from a formerly undecided Catholic anti-Trumper. And I know a lot of people in this camp like that just really cannot stand Trump, probably prefer DeSantis or someone else. But now we're kind of getting this coalition built around Trump of people that these kind of people really admire. So like RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, et cetera. So I'm just going to read the email I want to give. I thought it was really gave me a good perspective. So here we go. We're keeping the email anonymous, but sadly, despite giving it a chance last week, Kamala sealed the deal for me. So much for freedom of religion, a freedom she silently left out last night. While saying she will create unity, she also made it clear that the values of thousands of Catholics will be persecuted and prosecuted if we speak out against her social agenda. I may have to put up with her ideas and try to find some good, but I will not vote to be censored or demonized. I love the uplifting message of joy, but interesting, it's hollow and therefore a distraction and dangerous. She hasn't posted her official platform. I think she knows more than just Christians will be dismayed. Her vague position on the border is untrustworthy, in my opinion. She could fix that now if she meant it, and her economic ideas that she shared recently have been criticized by both the left and right as a bad idea. Lastly, women, we can do better than this. Let's wait for a woman chosen by the people, not lifted up by default, and whether pro-life or pro-choice, it at least does not glorify abortion like it's an ice cream from a snack truck.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love this. I love this.
And this
so
was
much.
right after her speech at the DNC. So this email came in.
Yeah. I mean, I love the line, I will not vote to be censored or demonized. And I think this is the point where hopefully undecided voters are starting to clue in that it's a pretty clear choice between the party of censorship and media control and the party where, our main candidate like goes off the cuff and says things and he doesn't sound like a polished politician, but at least there is debate in the Republican Party and there are conversations being had over issues.
For sure.
I mean, we have people like Governor DeSantis and JD Vance in the same camp as people like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK at this point. I mean, this is like just free for all, but it's free for all for a purpose and been brought together by maybe not the issues that matter most to Catholics, but certainly the issues that make possible debate, right? A desire for, we talked about this last time, which party is set up, is currently invested in preserving our constitutional order that makes the debate over pro-life policy possible, that makes the debate over things like, should the government ever censor, like in time of war? You know, maybe it was World War II and RDF, what's his name? FDR. Oh my gosh, look at me. And FDR.
Robert Downey
RDF,
Jr.
I've been doing RDLs. I don't know. and FDR like had to keep information away from the Germans. So maybe that censorship is okay. And maybe this isn't. Well, at least we can have that conversation in a country where the GOP controls the White House. If the Democratic Party controls the White House, there is no debate. The answer is just, yes, we can censor whatever the hell we want. Yeah. So I think that's what we're seeing here in this email. And yeah, I love her note about women. This whole thing about this was in the White Dudes for Harris meeting, where they just kept saying, wasn't it time for a woman? And this was with the Hillary campaign too. Wouldn't it be great to have a woman in the White House? I'm like, no, not just a woman. I would like the right woman in the White House. Oh my gosh, it's an embarrassment to our sex to just be like this identity politics of somehow, oh, she's female. That's all we need to know.
Yeah.
Like, where's your brain, ladies?
Yeah, and I think it speaks to, and I'm curious your perspective. I know that Tulsi Gabbard is a compelling figure to a lot of people, as is RFK Jr. Now, Tulsi Gabbard came out in Detroit and endorsed Donald Trump. And funny enough, at the same time, we get I can't even say this without laughing, but they were touting on Politico, like, got an endorsement. Kamala Harris got an endorsement from more than, I have to show the article because it makes me laugh, but more than 200. I don't know why it's not loading here. Kamala Harris gets Republican endorsement over 200 Republicans. And we're talking about McCain, Romney signed it. But then you go in a little bit deper.
Well, they're alumni of McCain, like, not McCain because he's no longer with us. So may he rest in peace.
Let's take a look at the list of the 200 endorsement. We have interns. We have communications department intern to Senator John McCain. Ann Dixon, political intern, McCain for president, 2008. Intern, Senator, like, these are the people that they're propping up. And the way that Politico wrote is like, wow, humongous, nail in the coffin for the Republicans. And I just keep thinking about the trade that we made here. And I would never have imagined it would be this way, but it feels as though the GOP has kind of traded the Romneys and the McCains. From what I saw from them as just a student of history, I guess, was just, we're going to cut taxes is our biggest promise. But we're going to involve ourselves in every foreign conflict possible. We're going to be sending bombs overseas until we can't anymore. And that's about all we have to offer. And then if we do talk any culture war issue things on the campaign trail, we will. And we're not going to do a thing about it in office, right? I mean, we talk about
marriage,
Equality Act, anything, nothing. Mitt Romney accomplished nothing. McCain accomplished nothing. These are complete rhinos, is what people would say. And so they're literally now, and I consider them similar, like a David French or whatever. Like, we need to vote Kamala Harris to preserve democracy, whatever. And they've all sold out. But then you get people, and I put them all in the same camp here. So you get Trump, RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, all have done things at great personal sacrifice to their station of life and career to basically sound the alarm that, hey, we need to have a domestic focus to our campaigns. Domestic focus being the health. So chronic illness from RFK Jr., no war, anti-forever war. Trump, famously one of the first Republicans to come out and say we were wrong about Afghanistan. We should have never been there. We need to start getting them out. And then Tulsi Gabbard, famously anti-war, anti-censorship, left her own party because she felt so censored. Now forming. So we have, it feels like this kind of insurgent group of people that are acknowledging we have a problem. We have a corruption problem. We have a war problem. And we need to get in and stop it. We have a censorship problem. And you get the Romneys and McCains hopping over to Harris saying, I don't even understand really their argument for leaving their party here. But it kind of excites me that we have this new party realignment. And I feel like it speaks a lot more to the things that we've kind of talked about here on this episode. Yeah,
100%. Yeah. On the Tulsi Gabbard note, I watched her speech endorsing Trump up in Detroit. And it was interesting to me because I think we overlook this a lot when we talk about Trump's record. And she talked about him as the president of peace, like we got as close to world peace. And we will never have perfect world peace until Jesus Christ comes again. Maranatha, Lord.
Facts.
But we were closer during his 4 years to at least a ceasefire, right? Worldwide.
No new wars.
Than we'd been. Yeah. No new wars. The first guy, no new wars in decades. And under Biden, of course, we've talked about this before, and she said, she was like, I am going to fight to get Trump back in the White House because he is the only person running who will bring us back from the brink of nuclear war, which is where we are right now around the world. And just really sobering there. And I think as far as like our lefty Catholic friends who are always like, peace, peace, and that could be attractive, right?
No,
that talking point. Maybe we should emphasize that a little more. Nothing. No. Okay.
They hate Trump more than they
lost cause.
Right. No, that's not a real
they
problem.
Hate Trump more than they love facts.
Right. But mean tweets. Yeah. And
but mean tweets.
People ask me like, oh, why is this interesting to you, Tom? And I'm like, I can speak to this more. I'm of draft age right now. And my children, like I think about myself, I think about my children. I am not willing to go overseas to die over these over conflicts that we should not be in the first place. Like I'd be interested to hear, like, if we have any veterans in the chat that were a part of Afghanistan, Iraq, like the sacrifices that they had to make, sometimes to the point of, you know, losing faculties, to be in a place that we ended up leaving in disgrace, and then losing 13 Marines, and now the region is just as unstable as it was before. Billions of dollars and
helicopters.
Like, I mean, there's always, of course, fog of war, but the politicians responsible for drumming us up to get over there, to stay there, a lot. Dick Cheney at his personal benefit. I see that as like one of the greatest evils of our time. The amount of families that it separated, the amount of lives lost, all for what? To get a few more dollars for military industrial complex. Like, that's a big problem to me. So when you hear me speak that way, like, that is forefront of my mind when it comes to politics and the new realignment.
It's very personal.
Yeah.
And it's very personal, I think, especially for people who are building families and have children, because we're the ones who will give the cannon fodder, right? Yeah. And people like to use JD Vance's point, the childless cat ladies, they don't have skin in the game, right? Yeah. They have they have people they love. They have people that they're friends with who might have to go over, but it's definitely not the same as your own flesh and blood. And I think, like, whenever I talk about this, I want to be really careful to distinguish between the honor and reverence that we give and we ought to give to our military service members as individuals who display these virtues of valor and courage. And the men and women who are overseas for our country right now, regardless of why the ruling class has sent them over there, they do live lives of valor and they do have purpose 100%. And they are good. They're examples of that to us. But like you said, Tom, it's incumbent upon us as voters to remember them and their sacrifice, and to put in charge of them a commander-in-chief and others who will also honor that bravery and that courage and not waste it in terms of the nation. And so again, like, we honor our military, we honor our service members, and we do that by electing leaders who won't just send them into Afghanistan's again. Yeah,
people that make the sacrifices to serve our country are the best of us. Like, I think of them very similarly as, you know, firefighters, cops, like a lot of people that put themselves in harm's way for society, specifically American, when it comes to our vets. I respect and admire them too much to casually send them places for cynical gain. And I think, like, even seeing Trump go to Arlington, and the left is trying, I thought it was this, the Lincoln Project was trying to tweet stuff, he's standing on a grave or whatever. They're trying to do all these gotchas with Trump, and they're like, oh, only the sitting president should be doing that. I'm like, yeah, he should. And he's not. So
he's sitting on a beach is where the sitting president is sitting.
So, I mean, I would love to get America back to a place where people rightfully fear us. We have a reverence for our soldiers, and we have a capability for violence that we withhold unless absolutely necessary. And the side I see talking like that are Republicans right now, or the Trump coalition. So anyway, I want to get into some of Kamala's policies now, because it's almost so unbelievable.
She has policies? Did you say Kamala's policies?
Well, so funny thing, observation. I don't know if any of you guys get Political Playbook. It's kind of like an insider nerd, like political email. Not exaggerating. 1/3 of the email was pulling teeth over whether or not Kamala Harris was going to do a single interview. Single. Oh my gosh. Talking about one. My personal favorite part of it was that, and I have the tweet here, or sorry, that's an old video of Kamala. Basically, it was like, we can't send out Walz to do interviews. Like, JD Vance, of course, has done like 1 billion interviews at this point. So the actual text here, what about Tim? One of the issues that Harris World is currently working to address is how to deploy running mate Tim Walz in the media. The danger in sending him out to do big solo interviews is that he might not have a full command of where Harris is on every issue. As someone pointed out to us last night, Harris talked about the opportunity economy, but if Walz were asked to define it, would he know how? Now,
No, because it's not a thing. Oh my gosh.
Now, I have to say, she does, like, this problem applies to her. She doesn't know her policies because there is no policy page.
Right.
So we get our first announcement that she's going to do an interview. Exciting. She's doing it with Dana Bash and CNN. She's going to do a joint interview, Step Brothers style, bringing Tim Walz in to both do it together. And I'm sure she's going to use them as a shield. But my favorite new policy from Kamala Harris, okay? She is going to build the wall. Bam. Harris flip-flops on building the border wall. Now, if you thought no one could be this shameless to flip-flop on something that she has used as a campaign issue, as a wedge issue for her entire political career for the most part. She is this shameless. If she's elected president, Kamala Harris pledges to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the wall along the southern border, a project that she once opposed and called un-American during the Trump administration. Now, I have a video of her campaigning for president talking about it, and I thought it was insightful. Here we go.
To have an administration and a president of the United States who puts his vanity projects ahead of the needs of the people of our country.
Oh, the Van project.
And let me just be more clear about that. I've been to the border. I prosecuted transnational criminal organizations. The idea that he is trying to say that we have people that are trying to invade our country to commit mass crime is a crisis of his own making. You talk with the people who take an oath to protect our border, and they will tell you the trafficking that is happening of drugs and guns coming into our country, it's happening at ports of entry. We don't need a multi-billion-dollar wall. That wall ain't gonna stop them. We need resources at our ports of entry. And of course, we need to have border security. But this is a crisis of his own making because it was a campaign pledge that took heat and propelled him to victory. And he feels the need to keep reciting what is a lie.
Well, she got her opportunity to see what would happen if we didn't build the wall,
now,
and she didn't.
Do I have to be the one to mention that the first thing that the Biden Harris, and remember, if people have forgotten, she's the vice president currently. First thing Biden did when he got into office was terminate border wall construction contracts and freeze money.
Yeah, what happened? How'd that go?
According to CBP, 12.5 million illegal immigrants hopped across the border. That is an unbelievably modest estimate. Because we're not even talking about gotaways, and we're back to square one. We're going to be spending hundreds of $millions on the border wall.
And the thing that gets me, and this is to the point of the email that came in, is that she doesn't have to wait to be elected president. Biden said she speaks for me on the border.
Oh, no, she's not the border czar. She was put in charge of the systemic reasons of migration patterns from South America.
Right.
Sorry, fact check, CNN.
Let me back up. Yeah, how'd that go too? How are those countries doing now? Did she address that? Sure. Like, I'll take what she says. She's just in charge of the systemic reasons or the root causes of illegal immigration. So let's just talk about that. How's that going? What's the percentage of Venezuelans in the last 3 years who have left their country? I think it's almost 30% of them.
Yeah.
So that didn't work either. But to go back to the wall, I mean, the shamelessness of it. It's like, if you elect me president, then I'll do something about it. She could take Cadaver Biden's hand and force him to sign an executive order that would shut it down today. That's what could happen. This is so, yeah, like you said, she takes shameless to a whole new level.
Did you hear her new campaign slogan? Make America Great Again?
Do we even MAGA?
Yeah. It's brand new.
So original.
It's really
original.
Make America Great Again. I hear she's going to get a spray tan and say we're going to win so much you're going to be tired of winning. I mean, what else can she steal? When I see the blonde toupee,
I'm just going to quit. Like
honestly, at this point, like, that is the central promise of the Trump campaign. What else can you steal? It turns out she also in Detroit shamelessly flips on EVs. So if you look over here, I mean, I just cannot get over it. Like yesterday, I felt like I was going crazy. I was seeing balloons. Okay. So Kamala's campaign just did a policy walk back for the ages. Her staffers now claim she doesn't support electric vehicle mandates. But the Biden EPA last March implemented new regulations to convert half of all new car sales to electric by 2030. They're now claiming she doesn't support something the government she works for currently is doing. And they said this in an email. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Shameless, of course, in Michigan too, but so flipping on the wall, flipping on EVs. And then my personal favorite was this Politico article. And we get to this all the time. It literally feels like I'm living in a strange new world. But Politico headline, here we go. Quote, our corrupt leadership. Vance tries to tether Harris to Biden during Michigan rally.
Wait. Repeat that slowly for the people.
All right, we'll do it again. Quote, our corrupt leadership. Vance tries to tether Harris to Biden during Michigan rally.
Tries to tether. She is the freaking vice president.
I think the tether that they're speaking of is the hyphen in between Biden and Harris in administration. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what JD Vance was pointing out. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Where else do we go from here? I'm at a loss for words. I'm really not. She's the vice president.
Yeah. Right. There is no trying to tether. She tethered herself to Biden when she accepted the nomination as his VP. And she tethered herself to him until he tanked in the debate in June. And then it was suddenly like, run as far away as I can from him. This was a great thread from Project 2025. Uh-oh. I said the words. Project 2025. This was when the DNC rolled out its platform during the convention. And it was just astonishing to see the flip-flop on the Democratic Party platform. So Project 2025 is saying, yeah, they can't come up with their own ideas, and they know that our ideas are actually popular, which is why they're lying about it. But then on their platform, they actually adopt Project 2025 takes on a host of issues, including the southern border, like Kamala Harris, reducing the federal debt, supporting a fair tax code, reshoring American jobs and product, blocking the Chinese Communist Party from buying U.S. farmland, and on and on. It goes on and on. And what it reminds me of, Pogo, is, may I call you Pogo?
You're in. Yeah, you can call me Pogo. Okay.
So what it reminds me of is, and this is probably going to come across as too strong, but I'll say it anyway. Say it. What it reminds me of is in Catholic theology, we understand evil as not its own thing. There isn't like a good God and then like an evil force, right? This, yeah. But evil is always parasitic on the good, because evil can't create for itself. It can only take what God has made beautiful and warp it, right? So what we're seeing here is a party that can't create its own positive solutions for what's really harming ordinary Americans like us. It can only take someone else's good ideas and pretend that it's theirs, but it's hollow. Just like anything that's evil, it's hollow, it doesn't actually exist, and it's all about power, right? Yep. And again, evil can't create, it can warp, it can only pervert, right, what's actually good.
I love that. I love that line. I think about that often, actually, about how evil is just a perversion of good, that the devil actually can't create anything new. And I have to say, Josh has basically created a chat mutiny. It's unbelievable. This is like a Maximus style rebellion. On vacation, oh, no. Josh is so locked in, he can't stay away. He's saying that I'm ignoring him in the chat. And I see your name, Josh. I see you. I see what the people are saying. They want a rant.
Or listening.
I think he's upset because people were roasting his rant last time, said it wasn't spicy enough. But yes, Josh, we see you in there. We know you're Maximus. People are now chanting, we want Josh. This is unbelievable. Try my best to run the show. And he's still doing this from wherever he is.
Okay, Mercer, we have 20 minutes to go. You could literally get on your phone right now, give us a rant, send it to Pogo.
Maybe he did. Let me check Slack.
Yeah, we got to check this out. This is intense.
Nope, he hasn't sent me anything. Get wrecked.
All right, Mercer, we solicited one from you.
You stay in the chat. Are we not entertained? Literally, it's like a max. I feel like I'm in Gladiator right now. Does that please?
You love that.
That can't make me Joaquin Phoenix. That dude was creepy in there. I do not want to be the bad emperor. I could be the chill one that dies. Was that supposed to be Marcus Aurelius? I think so.
Yeah, I think it was Marcus Aurelius and then his children. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll take Marcus Aurelius.
We'll go
one
with
of the last good emperors.
Hey, That reminds me, Pogo.
Yeah.
That's Gladiator reference. So we had that snake draft that we did for 4th of July, which was super fun.
Yes.
Super fun. Movie heroes, movie villains. It was great. And just a little teaser for the chat. We are working very hard to put one together for Labor Day for you all. So we're working hard on it. Pray that it comes to fruition. It will be so fun.
We have another
check
one.
it out.
We have another one. It's going to be good. There's going to be a special guest on it because Josh, of course, he'll probably hijack the chat again, but it'll be pre-scheduled.
Mercer's in the Badlands.
This is kind of awesome to know that Mercer can't be a part of this. Kind of makes me a little happy. He's going to be so mad because I know it's one that he'd like. But we'll have another one for him. Don't worry. We love you, Josh. Okay, so we're stepping in it, remember?
Well, we're going to step in it.
We're going to step in it.
Okay, I'm ready.
So this cool graphic, I'm going to show it here, and it's interesting. We got a lot of Catholics in the chat, as always. We have an article from the Free Press, one of Erika's favorites. Title, The Young Catholic Women Bringing Back Veils. And the description article is, why are so many young Catholic women across America showing up to church wearing a veil? It is easy to dismiss them as superficial millennials drawn to something pretty and trending on Tradcath Instagram. But Maddie reveals their reasons cut to the very heart of why we worship. Here's faith and fashion colliding. And this article is written by Madeline Kearns, who Erika speaks very highly of. Would love her to get on the show at some time.
Big fan of Maddie Kearns.
Fascinating article. First, I want to get Erika's take, but people in the chat, I would like to know general thoughts on veiling in church. Do you personally do it? Do you not do it? I've seen the trend kind of pop up, but Erika, I want to get your perspective first. What do you think this trend is all about?
Yeah, I think to speak of the trend before I talk personally, I think the trend, like Maddie points out in the article, and she gets this testimony from young women who have taken up veiling. I think the trend points to the fact that the liturgical winter that came in the wake of Vatican II with the reforms and the sort of stripping of the altars that we saw across the Western Church is fading into the past. And we see this trend also in the popularity of the TLM among the younger demographic. And I think that a lot of it, we got a comment about this on the article that we did on this, is older Catholics associate veiling with the pre-Vatican II church and maybe a childhood where they didn't learn to love Jesus and clericalism and all that. So they associate it emotionally with negative aspects of their memories of the church. And so they're more negative, but young people don't have that kind of baggage. And what they're looking for are ways to express reverence, to recover beauty in our churches. And I think that that's accurate. I love this article, though, most of all, because the women that she interviewed, several of them admit freely that, look, I took up veiling because I thought it looked pretty. And I like accessorizing. And it grew into something more. Yeah. Right. It grew into now I associate putting on the veil with being in a spirit of contemplation, with being in a sacred space. Yeah. And it became part of my prayer life. And I think that's a really interesting point about human nature in general. When we criticize outward pieties because we're like, well, it's not real because it's not internal and it's not fake. Well, the way human beings operate often, and we see this when we raise small children, is that first we do things outwardly, maybe for not the most pure of intentions. And gradually we can transform those outward practices into something really true and authentic and spiritual. And that's what we're seeing with these young women here. When people criticize young women, like I've heard, I have dabbled in veiling multiple times throughout my adult femalehood here as a Catholic, and I don't currently veil in church for a variety of reasons. But I've had multiple priests come up to me and be like, that's ostentatious was one line I got, Whoa. And another one was, that one was good. I was ostentatious because I genuflected before receiving. I received on the tongue and I wore a veil, and I'm like, how do you know what I'm doing this for? But that those kinds of criticisms, I think, miss the different ways in which God draws us into a deeper practice of our faith. And Blaise Pascal, I'm going to pull in my philosophy here a little bit. Blaise Pascal, he said that if a man wishes to grow in piety and he doesn't feel close to God, maybe he should start praying on his knees. And eventually that outward practice will lead to true devotion to our Lord. So I'm not going to criticize beautiful, like this is an ancient tradition in the church. It goes back obviously to St. Paul references it in his letters. I think that many women begin it for the right reasons. Many probably also begin it for more superficial reasons. But it is beautiful and it is part of our heritage. And I'm happy for one. We've been going to St. Mary's here in New Haven now for 13 years. And when we started, there was like no unveiling. So when I was dabbling in it, I would be one of maybe 2 women in a church of 300 to 500 people wearing a veil. Now it's probably 25 to 50 women on a given Sunday are wearing a beautiful veil or a hat or something cute. What are those wraparound things? Anyway, more like a not medieval, Middle Eastern kind of
hijab?
Wrap, a scarf. Not a hijab. That's Muslim. But a scarf. A scarf is what I'm trying to say. Wow, that was an easy word that I couldn't come up with.
Yeah, that wouldn't make much sense, would it?
Anyway, that's my take on veiling. And why I don't do it right now has more to do with the current political climate of our parish as we have consolidations and sort of there's so much the role that our family tries to play.
There's so much here. It's thank you for sharing your story, Erika, too, because it's so interesting how a lot of the judgment goes around. But in the chat, I'm seeing a lot of interesting perspectives. And Lori interestingly said, I do not veil, but my daughter does, which would be like a weird experience. And then, not to put her on blast, but like my mom, who I never thought in a million years would veil. Like, not to say she's like a feminist or anything like that, but just never would have imagined it. Recently has started wearing a veil. And she's in the chat.
Go, Janet.
I do not want to put my family on blast, but like, I actually was like, I thought that was really interesting. And I've talked to her about it. And I need to talk to her again about it. But this whole thing kind of reminds me a little bit of, I was talking to this guy playing golf. I was just golfing with a random guy. He's in his 60s. And he's no longer Catholic, but he's like, I grew up like Catholic. I was an altar boy. We had the Latin mass. Like I was there. And he's now non-denominational. And I was like, you know, what's funny? Like he said that like it was, I've never heard of Latin, which hilarious, the circles I run in, I guess. But I was like, you're not going to believe this, but like Latin masses are like trendy again. And young people are going. Like I was telling about the mass that we go to, and like there is a Latin mass at the church I go to. It's like, it's all young people. It's all like really young people with families, not all young people, but way more so than your, Novus Ordo green carpet church. And he was like surprised by that, like, oh, why that would come back. And I do think it has a lot to do with what you're saying about the stripping of the churches. It feels as though we've been robbed of something. So anytime you kind of discover something that brings you a little bit closer to that ancient tradition, I think it's really appealing. And I want to say most people, I can't speak for everyone. I think like people don't dislike veiling. I think maybe they had a bad experience with someone who does veil. And they're like, oh, they're just like in your face or obnoxious, or maybe that's projecting. I don't know. But it's one of those things like, at least how I see it, I would never be like, oh, you have to. But if it does bring you closer, it helps. And someone was like, I think it was Rosie who had an interesting take in the chat. She's like, veiling for trads is like charismatic. It's like charismatic worship for like charismatic people. I was like, that is a very interesting take. I would have never thought of that. But I guess I feel somewhat similar about like, maybe charismatic worship doesn't like appeal to me, but if it does bring someone closer and maybe it's a start towards like a deeper relationship with Jesus, then like all for it, as long as it's not disrespectful, of course. But
I mean, charismatic worship, that's a really cool point. Yeah, charismatic worship, I think, was my initial experience as a child growing up in the evangelical church. And it absolutely, like praise and worship, all of that goes along with that, absolutely brought me closer to Jesus. But even by the time I was in college, I had very much like kind of grown beyond it, not to like denigrate people who still do charismatic worship, but there was just, I needed more silence. I needed more quiet to go further in my relationship with God at that point. But the charismatic movement absolutely brought me into a deeper relationship with Christ. And I think, like you said, there are practices that I think a lot of times Catholics confuse big T tradition with little T traditions, right? Yeah. Like little T traditions are like the veil, the scapular, genuflect or whatever. And then big T traditions are what's not unchanging about, what is unchanging about our faith, what's not negotiable about our faith. And part of like living the Catholic life as a relationship with God is understanding that different expressions of that reverence might change over time. And that's not that your faith has changed or the faith has changed.
I think,
but you have.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is like, okay, this picks up by the Free Press. And I'm not sure if Madeline's Catholic herself.
Yeah.
Do you know?
She is.
Okay.
Yeah,
she is
yeah.
Catholic.
Yeah.
So to me, we're having an inter-Catholic conversation about like, why are we seeing it pop up? But if you were to think from the outside, seeing this start to happen, it would be a very peculiar trend, because you're doing, if anything, it's going further from what, a modern society is doing, like covering yourself more instead of revealing more would be an interesting trend to see from the outside. And I think maybe what people would associate with that is like, what their problem with it would be is like, oh, they're submitting to like an authority, or like, because in Islamic cultures you get hijabs and they're forced to cover. And so maybe there's like a negative association with that. But to me, it's kind of cool. Like whenever people are doing something that's so completely against modern trends, to the point where like people would point and call them weird potentially, like to me, it's like, okay, that's a cool nugget of like, why would someone feel so compelled about something to do something that would make them look like this, And then that would be like, oh, we got to look into this thing a little bit deeper, And I think that's also similar with what I see like with the traditional Latin Mass, or doing things that are like, it's different even than the contemporary trends in the church. Why? And I think that was part of like with my mom. And I think a lot of people, I'd be curious perspectives on this, but in 2020, when churches shut down, you found out who believed and who didn't believe in what they were doing. And
Absolutely.
The only church that did not shut down, one of the only ones, they did the traditional Latin Mass. And it's not that they were super public about the fact that it didn't shut down. Like they didn't make a big deal of it. They're just like, we're not going to stop, giving the Eucharist to people. Like that's more important. And if you're actually Catholic, you believe that. And so that was when my mom and even myself like started to go to the Latin Mass. And like, that was the discovery, because you're like, okay, these people clearly believe in what's going on. The people that just shut down, put up blast shields and gave finger wagging homilies virtually about people get the vaccine. Like they don't really care about what's going on.
Right.
And so that was the start, I think. And then people there were veiling. And so that was kind of start down a new path. It just really interesting trend. I think it's okay. Like, I don't know if people are looking for me to give a take. Like,
I think
you
it's
need
okay.
to do this. You don't need to do this. I'm like, look, if it helps you, great. If it doesn't, it's okay. You don't have to. I never force someone to. It's different to me than like people are like, should you receive with a kneeler and on the tongue? Like I have a much stronger opinion on that.
I have a much stronger opinion about that.
Because that has more to do with like reverence to the Eucharist and how to properly receive. Should the tabernacle be in the center of the altar? I have a much stronger opinion on that. Like there's so many simple fixes. And I think, was it Eric Sammons had a great take on all this? Like the Eucharistic Congress, the revival, like, was it a good initiative? Is it going to work long-term? He's like, it was good, but if it doesn't end up changing practical things within your church as to your reverence to the Eucharist, then like, kind of what are we doing here? And there's so many simple things that could be changed that would change the reverence and respect of the Eucharist in a church. First and foremost, put the tabernacle behind the altar. Easy.
Right.
Put some altar rails down, encourage people to kneel. Easy. Receiving on the tongue. Like these are really simple things that would encourage reverence. So I feel much stronger about those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Eric Sammons' point was absolutely on par. One other thing about the veiling that I think is really interesting is that it's something that only women do. And I think as our culture outside of the church is so like insane. There's no other, I would say confused, but that's too much of a euphemism.
Yeah, it's
it's insanity about men and women and how women have to do everything men does, and men can be women and they can play in their golf tournaments. I was just watching the PGA, the women's debacle.
PGA.
Right. Whereas like this is something that a young woman who's facing that in her workplace or in her sports team, she can come to Catholic Mass and be like, this is something only women do. And I'm not going to deny her that satisfaction of being like, this is a feminine, women only practice. And it just that clarity that she can feel doing that in church. Like, I'm not going to deny her that. I don't care if her motivation is like, oh, I'm not St. Catherine of Siena yet, so I can't do anything that looks holy. Like, what kind of an argument's that?
Yeah. Okay, we got slide Twilight Zone now. Erika, you're up first. What you got
I
going?
can't pick Pogo. Oh my gosh.
You can do a couple. We have no Josh. We have to make up.
Wait, what are you doing? Are you going to do the Star Wars thing?
Oh yeah.
Can I?
Should we could just submit that as a joint, and then we could have our.
Okay.
That's going to be Josh's, because he's a nerd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he's not here. Okay, well then I'm going to go with weird statues replacing Robert. Can I get the original one first, Pogo? I put the link down in here
I got
for
you.
Yeah, so this is in New Orleans originally until several years ago. You can probably guess the date, those of you who are tuned into happenings. Here's Robert E. Lee on Traveler, his warrior horse there. It's a very beautiful statue, cast in bronze, and it stood there for, I forget how many years, over 100 years in New Orleans. And as we remember, during the iconoclastic movement of the George Floyd summer,
Summer of Love.
We took down the statue because our public spaces have to be safe and welcoming. What did they replace it with? Let's pull up what they replaced it with.
Let's see. And there was a fake one.
Welcoming.
There was a fake one, but this is the real.
It's the real one.
Okay.
Erika did her research. Here we go.
Is this a
All
spoon?
right. For those of you on the audio, let me just describe this. The new bronze statue, it is an elongated naked female figure with a spoon for a head,
Nice.
a giant ladle or something. And what is she wrapped in? She is wrapped in a serpent. That is a giant bronze serpent climbing up her body. I don't know about you, but as an educated American woman, I feel much more threatened by this symbolism than by a Confederate general on his horse.
Mhm.
Like, all of the imagery here, as someone who grew up in a Christian household, is really disturbing. I mean, the woman's face is perverted into a ladle, I don't know, for reception. She's naked and it's a serpent, guys.
Wait, you don't have one of these laying around your house? Naked spoon woman snake?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is not around my house.
Got it.
And so we threw this. This was in the Catholic Vote Slack channel, which is why I bring it up. And talk about a firestorm. This was like an intra-CV throwdown over Confederate imagery. So I actually wanted to bring this up as my Twilight Zone because I want to hear Pogo.
Oh no.
And his thoughts on the Confederacy and the Lee statue.
Everyone loves doing this to me. I personally, on the statue debate, I don't think we ever should have torn down Robert E. Lee because I think it is a part of our history. And personally, I actually, in my research on the Civil War, I think Robert E. Lee was one of the most virtuous men involved. Yes, he fought for the South, but he also fought with his brothers in the Mexican-American War. He served his country honorably. He was in West Point with all the same generals. He ended the war early to stop more bloodshed. He was given a place of honor afterwards instead of arraigned and killed. So I see Robert E. Lee as a obviously flawed man, but I don't see him any differently than other figures in the Civil War. And I think this very narrow, cynical ploy to turn the Civil War, to reignite racial tensions of the Civil War are hollow and partisan. And it bothers me because if you really look at the figures, like Abraham Lincoln, if you go through some of his writings, by all accounts, if you were to compare him to modern definitions of slavery and racism, he'd be the worst racist walking right now. Like if he was on Twitter right now, he would be harassed because he didn't even think in his own writing that African Americans were equal to white people. He said it multiple times. I mean, he did unite the country, which was a great service. Reconstruction happened. The South was punished. And I think what I think of when I think of the Civil War is a nation of brothers fighting this tragic, bloody fight of friends. Like these were all Americans. And we had to go through this.
And the generals had been friends. Like they all went to West Point together. They all fought in the previous wars together.
Right. And
like
it's tragic and compelling to me because these were all Americans and they were brothers. They all knew each other and they were fighting over slavery. And the North won out and we've progressed as a country to the place where we should be. And that was part of the original promise of America. And when I look back on this time, like even if you go back, I visited Gettysburg before, and I highly encourage if anyone hasn't, you should go. I have felt such a spiritual, like that was one of the most spiritual places I've ever been. I've been to a lot of churches too, but like you could feel there was something in the air. I don't know how to describe it. Just a real tragedy and history and a spiritual nature to that place. And there's all these like dumb, ghost tours or whatever. I'm not even talking about that, but like if you understand what really took place there, if anything, I think back and I was extremely tragic. I'm happy that we moved on as a country and that everyone is treated with equal rights. And hopefully we get there with abortion, by the way. But I think to denigrate and to simplify and to hollow out, I think of it similarly as with saints. And I see NCR do this all the time. And they're bad faith. It's all bad faith. They take saints from different periods of history to try to prove contemporary points. So an example would be someone wrote like, these three saints would be cat ladies, according to J.D. Vance's Childless Cat Ladies. And I can't remember who he said, but I'm like, you think that she aligns with your contemporary worldview on racism, on homosexuality? I guarantee she does not. And so many saints in their era would have been considered by contemporary measures horrible people, like by the modern term of racism, by modern views on homosexuality. So I think it's bad faith, and there should be a certain amount of reverence and appreciation for context and history and nuance that we just don't have with the Civil War, and we don't often have with saints when used in current contexts. So it just frustrates me when people, like a greatest example, I said thanks Obama kind of as a joke. When people use it to advance a political agenda to get power, money, acclaim, all of like the race baiters of today. And I'm looking forward to Am I a Racist? I'm definitely looking forward to that because Robin DiAngelo is like one of the greatest examples. They use it to divide us all for a profit when really we could come together and be like, just understand it contextually for what it is and have like a good faith conversation about it.
We go for it.
Did I sound okay? Because when I say that, some people really blow up and are like, Tom, you're the worst. And you would defend the Confederacy.
No, I think
like,
so.
I wouldn't.
And I think that too, I know we're going over time, but I think that the point about forgetting all the history that happened in between, like we're going to tear down Robert E. Lee because we can't remember the men who fought in that war. It's ignoring all of the people who came between. I mean, this is like 180 years ago, right? No, 160 years ago now. And there has been progress made in our country. There has been the people who put up that statue were not themselves like slave owners at that point because slavery was over. And but there's something they want to remember there in the nobility that can come even in a flawed character who's not right on some of the most important things, right? And I think that ignoring the progress that our country did make and reigniting the racism as if we're still in 1866 Virginia is absolutely irresponsible and reckless and just pushing our country more and more back to that time of extreme division than healing it. It's bad faith. I'm with you. So bad faith argument. All right.
Yeah, what do you got? Okay. So someone said I have to talk about Star Wars because I've brought it up before. If this show goes over a little bit long, you get a little bit of bonus Loopcast today, I guess. Thanks for sticking with us. So for those who haven't seen, and it's funny, someone sent this to me like I hadn't seen it. Oh yeah, I was following it. The Acolyte was canceled. Now, interesting for a few reasons. So if people aren't familiar, this was a $180 million project from Disney, Kathleen Kennedy's real crown jewel, one of the biggest flops in modern history. It was about lesbian space witches that developed a new form of the Force, and it, of course, made the Jedi out to be the bad guys. It had a scene where a girl gave herself a haircut with a lightsaber. Some of the weakest action sequences I've ever seen. Little plot coherence. Where else should I go with this? Anyway, I could go on and on. For anyone who's like a Critical Drinker fan, he's got a great YouTube channel. I was just waiting the whole time to see what he would say. So they were like, why is this getting canceled? Well, it was canceled due to low viewership. And viewership dove after episode 2. And I think the only people watching this seriously were kind of hate watching it, like the Critical Drinker to then come on and talk about it. It cost $630,000 for every minute of screen time.
Oh my gosh.
It's like
that is
hard to
mind-boggling.
How do you wrap your mind around that much money going into such a dumpster fire product? It just completely blows my mind.
Well, the thing that killed people, I think, what kills me, is that it was billed by Disney as like a continuation of the Star Wars story, more backstory. It's part of the Star Wars universe, and then you actually watch it, and it has nothing. I did not watch it. I just. I'm going to talk about something I didn't watch myself, so shoot me. But I don't think I had to.
No, I wouldn't recommend. It was a big waste of time, and it continues down this line of like intentionally destroying our heroes and cultural icons. It was the same thing they did to Luke Skywalker.
You know what the writing team said?
What?
You know what the writing team said?
What'd they say?
They hired a team of women to write this, who bragged that they themselves had never watched a Star Wars movie, or maybe had watched like half of like Jar Jar Binks or clips of Princess Amala or something like that. So they intentionally hired people who had no idea what went on Star Wars to write this Star Wars thing.
But they were all women.
And just tear it down. Yeah, exactly. The intention was to tear it down. This is a Marxist takeover of Star Wars.
They did, and they succeeded, and they tarnished everyone.
No, they didn't.
Well, they succeeded in tarnishing legacy. Like, things can't be unseen. I mean, even like simple things like, and it was the same thing they did with Rey in the new trilogy. I don't want to get too deep in this, but like they're taking things that were well written, and the subject matter was with reverence. Like if you go to the original trilogy and the Force, like the Force is this kind of like mysterious thing that is treated with reverence, and it take a long time to understand and train it, and it was hard to weaponize. And then they're like, in this show, they're like, yeah, actually the Force kind of sucks, and we're going to create a new Force that's only available to lesbian witches called Threads. And it's like, even something as simple as that was insane. And of course it made the Jedi, we're like, oh, you know what we're going to do here? We're going to show that the Jedi are actually corrupt and the bad guys. And if it's like, it's just so lowbrow. Everyone's done this at this point. They're corrupting everyone's heroes, and it frustrates me. But yeah, canceled. But my personal favorite part was there was a petition that went around, and they're like, can Star Wars survive the worst of its fans? Because obviously you go to Rotten Tomatoes, like universally panned. Like everyone hated it, except a small vocal minority of LGBTQ, rainbow, whatever. And they're like, yeah, all the people that didn't like it are racist, homophobic, sexist, don't have open minds. And they're like, Star Wars The Clone Wars was terrible for the first season. It just needs time to develop. I'm like, I don't think they got $180 million and we're at the benefit of this conglomerate streaming services. So yes, if Disney knew what was good for them, they'd fire Kathleen Kennedy, but I think she's going to retire. But she's looking for one more bang to like come out.
Is that like an honorable discharge? Is that what's going on?
But what's interesting about this whole thing too is a lot of times with Disney shows that flop, or just shows in general that flop, they don't do a public announcement that it was canceled. They kind of just like leave it up in the air. Like, hey, are we going to have a new season? I don't know, maybe. And then everyone forgets about it. So the fact that they felt the need to come out and publicly be like, yeah, we're canning it. Like that doesn't happen with other, TV show projects like this. So
that's not bad.
Interesting. And then I wanted to bring up one final point. Sorry, we're going a little bit long. But we're getting a lot of ballot debate. And so RFK Jr., when he dropped out of the race, he said, I'm staying on the ballot in places that don't matter as much. So places that are already kind of solidly. And I'm going to stay on in 10 states, the swing states. And it turns out that states are now fighting him about whether or not he can get off the ballot. Imagine that. Democracy abounds. So we have Michigan forces RFK Jr. to stay on the ballot. Now, what's funny about this is directly after 2 months before, they were suing RFK Jr. as to whether or not he could appear on said ballot. And this is all from a candidate who no one's casted a single vote for. Imagine that. So Michigan's denying him taking off the ballot, and this is a state that could decide the election. Of course, they're using some like ridiculous technicality as to whether or not why he can't, whatever. And I'm just thinking in my head, who's going to be the first red state to be like, yeah, we're not taking Biden off the ballot?
I like that. I like that, Pogo.
And I'm thinking to myself, if they leave Biden on the ballot and they have Harris as her own, Harris Walz and Biden, Harris, whatever, I think there's a decent amount of people that would still vote for Biden. Which is insane to say, I know, but I think there would be a decent amount, and it would damage in the same way that them leaving RFK Jr. on would damage. But I just love to see like RFK Jr. continue to be proven correct, because his whole thing was the Democrats sued me into oblivion. They're trying to keep me off ballots. They kept me from running a fair campaign as a Democratic candidate. So he had to go independent. Mm-hmm. And that they can, and Kamala Harris in her DNC speech said, we're fighting against people who change the rules. They make up rules when it doesn't work their way, and then they cheat. And
oh my God,
literally, he's trying to take his name off the ballot that they sued to keep him off for so long, and now they're not letting him do it. It's
and
like
now they're suing to keep him on. Yeah, the people who changed the rules. Well, maybe on Friday we can get into the presidential debate rules and how we might be changing some rules for that too. A little teaser there.
Yeah,
for
I think
Friday.
Well, we got Tinfoil Tom coming up. We're going to keep Josh off the show, even if he revolts in the chat. I'm sure he'll make an appearance. He can't stay away. But great show today. A lot of fun. Just me and Erika. I thought we did pretty good. Should I throw out some lasers to end the show?
Oh, yeah. Wait. Can I do it? Oh,
great
yeah.
show. You can't do it. You don't have a Mac.
Oh. No, I don't.
But if you guys want to send lasers to all your friends and you appreciate me giving you that advice, like the episode. You guys hanging out, like the episode. Share us around. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Apple Podcasts and Spotify, go subscribe to us there. Thank you to everyone who's listening in podcast form. And if you want to email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. I've actually been getting a decent amount of questions for FAQ Friday ahead of time.
Oh,
which
fun.
is pretty awesome. I was like, I appreciate that
I'm
it's catching on.
excited.
So we'll have the opportunity for the chat to ask, and we'll also have email questions I'm going to go through. I appreciate you guys sending those in. Best way, of course, is to become a champion. CatholicVote.org/champions. It truly, and I was saying to some people in the emails, like, oh, thank you so much. We love the show. And they donate. I'm like, the only reason we're able to do the show is because of you, is because of people that support us financially. I cannot say enough. Thank you so much. The only reason we can do this. Thank you to everyone who listens. I've just been extra grateful, I think, to have this cool community, even to have the Veil conversation with today. So, someone said, listen to my mom about Pogo. Yeah, I'll talk to my mom about it. I'll see what she says. We're going to get an update. She called me yesterday. I'd say she's got pretty good sense of humor about it all, but we'll see. But yeah, pray for us. Best thing you can do. St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, St. Fidelis, pray for us.